The storm arrived earlier than anyone expected. Heavy rain slammed against the small windows of the worn-out apartment building, and thunder rolled like some distant giant awakening. Inside a dimly lit room on the second floor, Emily Jensen clutched her belly, already drenched in sweat despite the freezing wind slipping through the cracks in the walls. She was 9 months pregnant, alone, frightened, and days away from delivering her first child. The doctor had warned her not to stay alone too long, but tonight she had no choice. Her husband, Mark, was deployed overseas. There were no relatives nearby. Only one soul stayed faithfully by her side, a 3-year-old German shepherd named Shadow. Shadow paced nervously across the room, ears flat, tail stiff, sensing something was wrong. Emily tried to push herself to the kitchen counter, breathing through the pain, but every step felt like a mountain. Her contractions had started 2 hours earlier, but her phone, soaked from earlier rain, refused to turn on. The power kept flickering, and the storm was rapidly worsening. Shadow approached her, gently pressing his head against her thigh. Emily smiled weakly and stroked him between the ears. "It's okay, boy, I'll be fine. I just need to rest." But Shadow knew better. He circled her again, sniffing the air, whining anxiously as another sharp contraction hit her. Emily gasped and collapsed to her knees. A buzzing sound filled her ears. Her vision blurred. The world spun. She reached for the edge of the sofa but missed and hit the floor with a soft thud. Shadow's bark pierced the room like an alarm. Emily tried to push herself up, but the faintness washed over her again. Her lips parted in a whisper, "Shadow, stay with the baby, please." Before she could speak another word, Emily slipped into unconsciousness. Shadow froze. His golden brown eyes widened. He nudged her shoulder, pawed her arm, barked loudly, but she lay still. Lightning flashed. The apartment trembled. Outside, the river behind the building began to rise from the storm. Shadow lowered his head, sniffing Emily's belly. The tiny heartbeat inside was quick, frantic, scared. The baby wasn't coming later, the baby was coming now. Shadow's instincts roared alive. He ran to the front door, scratched it violently, tried to pull the handle with his teeth. No use, it was locked. He bolted to the window overlooking the street below. Rain blasted the glass, visibility zero. No neighbors out. No cars. No one who could hear his barks. He needed help. He ran back to Emily and gently pressed his body against her belly as if shielding the child. Then he did something extraordinary. He nudged her until she lay safely on her side, lifting her head with a pillow, copying the position he had once seen her take in a childbirth video she watched weeks ago. He remembered. His training, though basic, had taught him one thing: protect. Shadow sat beside her for a moment, every breath filled with worry. He licked her cheek, but she remained still, pale, cold. The baby inside kicked, as if pleading. He couldn't wait. He ran once again to the window and leapt onto the sill. The latch was loose from years of neglect. Shadow rammed it with his shoulder once, twice, the third time, it snapped open. Cold wind and rain surged inside. The drop below wasn't too high. Without hesitation, Shadow jumped. He landed hard but safe, skidding onto the muddy ground. Rain matted his fur instantly. He scrambled to his feet and bolted through the street, barking at every door, pawing at gates, leaping at windows. But the storm had forced everyone inside. Lights were off, curtains drawn. The wind drowned out his cries. Shadow kept running. A passing car skidded dangerously close to him before swerving away. The driver didn't even notice the desperate animal in the downpour. Shadow sprinted toward the only building where hope lived, the small red brick clinic 4 blocks away. Emily had walked there once for a checkup. Shadow remembered the smell. He remembered the nurse who had given him a biscuit. His paws slapped against cold pavement. His lungs burned. His ears were numb. But he ran harder. The clinic was dark, closed for the night. But a faint glow flickered inside, a maintenance worker doing late cleaning. Shadow barked furiously at the glass door. The worker, startled, stepped back, unsure what was happening. The dog looked wild, soaked, frantic. Shadow barked again, turning in circles, then sprinted a few steps toward the street before turning back, eyes begging. The worker hesitated, confused. Shadow lunged at the door, paws pounding the glass as he barked with every ounce of strength in his body. Finally understanding panic, the worker unlocked the door. Shadow immediately grabbed the man's sleeve and pulled. "Whoa, whoa, what's wrong, boy?" the worker said, heart racing. Shadow pulled harder. The man grabbed a raincoat and followed him out into the storm. Shadow took off, looking back every few seconds to make sure he was following. They reached the apartment building. Water already filled the lower steps as the river overflowed. Shadow bounded up the stairs, the man rushing after him, slipping on the wet concrete. The dog led him directly to Emily's apartment. The door was locked. Shadow growled, then charged head first, barking, pawing desperately. The worker kicked the doorknob with full force. Once, twice. On the third kick, the door burst open. The scene silenced him. Emily lay unconscious, her breathing weak, her skin turning pale. Blood stained the floor beneath her. Her baby was moments away from coming, but she wasn't responding. Shadow whimpered, nudging the man toward her. "Oh God, oh no," he whispered, rushing to her side. "We need an ambulance." He pulled out his radio, shouting for immediate medical backup. Shadow stood over Emily, refusing to leave her side even as paramedics thundered up the stairs minutes later. They rushed in, took one look, and realized how critical she was. "She's losing consciousness," one paramedic said urgently. "We need to deliver the baby now. She won't make it to the hospital." Shadow shook uncontrollably, pacing in circles. The team worked fast. Towels, medical bags, oxygen mask, flashlights. Everything in the small apartment turned into an emergency room. Thunder clapped directly overhead. Emily suddenly gasped, a small breath, barely enough. Shadow rushed to her, licking her hand. Her eyes fluttered open for a brief second. She saw the paramedics. She saw the ambulance lights through the window. She saw Shadow beside her, drenched, trembling, refusing to leave. Her lips quivered in a whisper, "You brought them." And she slipped unconscious again. The paramedics worked intensely. After several excruciating minutes, the cry of a newborn filled the stormy air. The baby was alive. Shadow froze, ears perked, tail trembling. He stepped forward as the nurse wrapped the baby in towels. "He's breathing," the paramedic said, relief washing over him. But Emily wasn't waking up. Shadow lowered his head onto her chest, whimpering. The paramedics prepared the stretcher and carried Emily and the baby out. Shadow trotted beside them, refusing to be left behind. He hopped into the ambulance without waiting for permission. No one stopped him. During the ride, Shadow rested his head next to the newborn's tiny foot, guarding him, warming him, humming softly. At the hospital, doctors rushed the baby to neonatal care while Emily was taken into emergency treatment. Shadow waited outside the operating room, pacing, crying softly whenever he heard footsteps but didn't see her. Hours passed. Nurses tried to move him, but he wouldn't leave. He stationed himself at the doorway like a soldier, like a father, like something more than a dog, a guardian. As dawn broke through the clouds and the storm finally eased, the door opened. The doctor stepped out. Shadow rose instantly. "She's alive," the doctor said with a tired smile. "It's a miracle she held on."